Hello and welcome to For the Hawkra, a Seattle Seahawks podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz, and today I am joined by a special guest, Andy Dooley. He is our Seattle Seahawks in-game host at Lumen Field on Gameday. He has a new book coming out, Lead with Faith, Play with Purpose. It releases July 30th. You can order it off of Amazon.com, and I'll be sure and post a link down in the show notes so you can find it. And so let's get right to it and welcome on Andy Dooley. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
I'm fired up to talk to you, man, because, we have listeners all over, and maybe they've never been to a Seahawks game. Maybe they have questions about what you do.
Yeah.
What is your average game day experience like?
Wow. Okay. So I get there early in the morning, and it's when you got that Seattle mist in the air. It's like a little chill, and we're going over our practice notes or whatever we need to talk about during the game. And then I'm there for hours until game time. I'm either checking out different aspects of Lumen Field. I still, even though this would be year 3, every time I'm standing on that field, I'm still in awe. Because when those lights are on, it's just different, So in the game, I'm going to be there hyping you up. You'll see me pop on a Jumbotron with the other hosts. And I just have fun with it. And, try to let everyone know that we have the greatest fans on this planet in the NFL.
How did you prepare for a job like that? Because I can't imagine there's for one, how do you even go about thinking that it's even possible that you would be doing this?
I didn't. I didn't even know it existed. And
Right.
It really didn't. They found me on TikTok. Literally, Blitz would follow my TikToks. He'd be on my lives and said he loved my energy. And then I went to it was like an influencers combine. I went to the influencer combine, and then I met the staff, and we just vibed and connected. And they asked me, hey, would you be interested in bringing your energy to Lumen Field into the 12s? And kind of explained what the job would look like. And it was still building and in the works. And of course, I would love to. And it's just something you don't prepare for. I can't, at least in my situation, I know there's other jobs that's very similar in arena host, but in my situation, I didn't even know it existed.
What are the nerves like kind of before that first moment too? Because, and I want to get to talking about your book as well,
yeah.
it takes me back to the first time that I ever went live on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never had any background in radio. It was not like I went to school for it or anything.
Right.
But I'm working weekends, and it's very. I don't have anybody around me. It's just me in a studio, and I just remember vividly the guy who was training me up on it. He's like, "Now, when we go live here, there's only going to be about 25,000 people that are hearing your voice right now." And that's not what I needed in that moment.
Right.
But that stuck with me. Now, as an in-game host, it's very evident the number of people that you're speaking to.
Absolutely. You know what? I will never forget. My very first time doing it was the Broncos game when Russell Wilson was coming back.
Ooh.
So the energy, the entire week leading up to it, the energy when you stepped onto the field was insane. I have to admit, when I stood on that 50-yard line, I had an outer body experience. If my wife didn't record me doing it, I don't know if I would have remembered doing it, because I was so excited. I'm the type of person that once I'm in the crowd and I see all 70,000, I zoom and lock in. I get super excited. And so I remember when the sound went off, I heard the bird. I'm standing next to G. Scott and started talking to the crowd, and the crowd just went crazy. I'll never, ever forget that. That felt like what a Super Bowl vibe would be, because it was such a big game for the Hawks.
Right.
And every time Russell stepped on the field, it didn't matter if he was warming up, the crowd just started booing. It was insane. It was insane. The entire game, anytime he stepped on the field, it was just like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a long day.
So how was that experience for you? Because now I'm kind of curious about, how you became to be a sports fan, became to be a Seahawks fan. Like when did you start being a sports fan?
Oh, when I was born, my dad was huge into sports. My mom and dad were both martial artists. My dad was a football player, swimmer, obviously martial artist, played basketball. So it just was in our household. And I remember Saturdays him watching college football, Ohio State Buckeyes, because we lived in Ohio at the time. And he would always take us to, like, for example, if I'm playing Little League, then he would take us to like a high school game so we could have a vision, in the future. Middle school, same thing. And then I remember when I was in high school, middle school, he took us to our first game at the Horseshoe against Ohio, and it was Ohio State versus UW.
Oh,
Yeah, crazy, right? And I just remember seeing the players and I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I have chills right now even thinking about it because I could vividly see it. It's just etched in my brain. So as a young kid, we grew up in a household of sports, and it's just always been part of my life.
Andy Dooley's book, Lead with Faith, Play with Purpose, comes out July 30th. Andy, okay, so that's how it started. And you got that experience with UW, you're in Ohio. At what point then do you come to the Seattle area, start to get involved more with Seattle sports?
Yeah, so after Ohio, I moved to San Diego, California. I was out in California for a while. And then I moved to Seattle for like a year and a half. I met my wife, we got married, and then we ended up back in California. So us coming back to Seattle wasn't until days before the pandemic. My wife was pregnant with our fourth. We wanted to be around family. Family was here in Seattle, so we made the move. And literally days before literally days before the pandemic hits, right where like the retirement home like up the street, where it was like the first, I guess it was the first place that it happened here.
Yeah,
And
Seattle was one of the first places in the U.S. apart from the Bay Area, I think.
yeah, it was like ground zero here.
Yeah.
And so we came here in 2020, or is it 2019? 2020, yeah, obviously 2020 we got here. And I had this, and this is, my wife would tell you, I had a weird feeling. I was walking off the plane and I was like, babe, I don't know why, but I'm going to tell you now. But I feel like I'm going to be doing something with the Seahawks. I didn't know what, I didn't know how. I just had a feeling, and it was so strong, and I didn't want to hold it to myself, but I didn't want to tell anyone else other than my wife. And I just left it on that. So next thing you know, 2020 hits. I started work March 1st, get furloughed. I'm sent home on March 12th. And that's when I started doing TikTok. And my Instagram was hacked at the same time. So I lost everything. Had to start over with my Instagram as well. And from that point on, my TikTok just kept growing. And within a year, it hit 1 million followers. And I couldn't explain to you exactly, other than consistency, how it just like snapped that way. And the Seahawks reached out to me.
Yeah. So, and now you're up to what, like 2 million followers on TikTok?
Almost 1.9.
Well, let's get you there.
Yeah,
Whoever's listening,
awesome, guys.
if you aren't following Andy out on TikTok, let's get him to 2 million.
That'd be incredible. And I'll thank the Hawkers for that.
There we go. And so when did you start following the Seahawks? Like you obviously you were aware of them as a team when you moved to Seattle, because you had that idea that you wanted to be working for them.
Yeah, I've been following the Seahawks since when I moved here in 2009 the first time.
Okay.
And so I was following it since then. And you can imagine we're in California and we were, Seahawk fans in California. And where we lived was literally down the street from Agora Hills where the Rams ended up moving in. So,
Okay.
yeah. So it's been a while.
Yeah. So what's your first Seahawks memory?
My first Seahawks memory, Sean Alexander. He
Nice.
had a game where he just went crazy and they kept running the sweep and they couldn't stop Sean Alexander. And I'm trying to remember the team. I just remember
I think it
those
was the
old
Vikings.
Was it the Vikings?
I know I think it was his biggest game against the Vikings where he rushed for like 260 yards, something
I
crazy like
think
that.
you're right because when they were wearing those, I just remember the old throwbacks they had on.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. Who is this guy? And I kept looking him up because I was like always into running backs because I played running back. So that's my first memory, Sean Alexander.
See, okay, so you're into running backs. My first favorite running back was Chris Warren.
Oh,
And then,
okay.
that led then to Sean Alexander, which was the first jersey I ever got, after his MVP season, which it didn't turn out so well for him right there.
I'll say my first jersey was Marshawn Lynch, Beast Mode.
Okay.
That was my first jersey.
Yeah. Well, I still kick myself too over it was the end of that 2011, the end of that season where they had I think they were 7-9 going into the playoffs, and it was the last regular season game against the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, because I live in Montana.
Okay.
And I told myself, okay, I'm only going out for one game. I could wait and see if they make the playoffs and go and watch them play against the Saints, who are, the defending world champions.
Right.
Or I could go and watch the game against the Rams. And if it's, it would be cool if they win the game and they make the playoffs. I go to the Rams game, which they win. It's cool. Charlie Whitehurst gets the win to send us into the playoffs. But then I missed out on the Beastquake run.
The Beastquake. Oh my goodness. I was screaming the entire time. And it just kept going. And it kept going. And the disrespect behind Marshawn running. Oh, I'll never forget that. That was beautiful.
One of the all-timers for sure. So
I can only imagine what it would have been like to be there in that moment.
The only thing I can maybe compare it to imagine it is being in the crowd for the tip, of Richard Sherman to send us to the Super Bowl. Yeah. Is that
wow?
I mean,
I feel like the only thing I could compare to would have been the Broncos game,
right?
Because it was so loud at one point. You know how you can see the heat wave? Like you can see it. I can literally it felt like I was on old college NCAA game. You know when you're playing in, did you play video games?
I probably way back like a Tecmo Bowl.
Oh, okay. So the college football, because college 25 is actually dropping this year. Insane. Yeah. For those who played college football, know what I'm talking about. There's a point in the game where all the lines are like squiggly and moving around, like to give you that feel of the hype in the game. It was like that at that Broncos game. And at one point I just stood there and I just was like, I am so glad I'm here right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we have that history established of you as a Seahawks fan, like I can understand like how impactful that moment was with Russ coming back, because here he is, our quarterback for all these years. He, there's at least something that happens with him in the front office that makes them decide that it's okay to trade our quarterback of, the dude had been our best quarterback of the franchise ever.
Right.
And I just remember how uh, upset I was when that trade
Mm.
happened, because there had been all that history, and I I wanted it to work for longer,
Mhm.
because I just wanted Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, and John Schneider to continue on, find a way to bring us back to that Super Bowl type team that we had years ago.
Yeah.
They trade him away, obviously. It works out for what it does. But then, um, yeah, to have that be the first game was pretty wild,
Yeah. I had a lot of people asking me how I felt about that trade. And the best way I could put it was, if you were in a relationship and you and that significant other go your separate ways, and I felt like, thank you for all you did. I appreciate it, but you know what? We got to move on. And I felt like that's where I was at with it. I just wasn't I don't know. I never was like a huge, like, diehard Russell Wilson fan. Nothing against him at all. I just wasn't, so for me, I was super thankful because it was, I mean, almost a decade. He
right?
was a part of something huge, you know? And I'm super thankful what he brought to Seattle and what he did for the Seahawks, but I love Coach Pete, and I love Schneider. Those guys, I mean, I wouldn't even be in this position if they didn't believe in me,
Right.
So for me, I was like, hey, if this is what's best for our Seahawks, then I'm riding with them.
And I think the thing that was so tough at the time is, it's one thing if you have a team where that transition, like, you can see um, who's coming up next. Maybe if they had a younger quarterback that you're like,
Right,
oh, I
right.
want to see what this guy is able to do.
Yep.
But it was Geno Smith on the team, and I think that, yeah, we had like the cool moments of Geno when he came in for Russ when he got injured
Yeah.
in that Rams game.
Mhm.
But I don't think we could have projected to, just how, I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with Geno just because he'd been in the league so long, and
Mhm.
then we got this great comeback season from him.
Yeah.
Have you fully bought in with Geno, or are you like Team Geno? Or are you still more of a running back guy, so you're kind of quarterback agnostic?
No, I'm team Gino in the sense of I had the privilege and honor to be able to watch during training camp for these past couple years and to see how Gino works and how I think the biggest thing about Gino was his willingness to help others. Like he really like I know what it's like when you're competing against another running back. I mean, that's your teammate, that's your boy, but you want to start, you want to play,
Yeah,
And to see how he showed love to Locke when Locke was here was incredible. I'm like, this guy, he's different, And I feel like we're gonna see this year. I think to be honest, if the Colts didn't snag Anthony Richardson
yeah,
last year, he'd have been probably with us.
hmm,
That's just my thoughts.
right,
So I get the hesitation for, fans because they're just not sure because Gino has that comeback season, which was just incredible. And then last year was just not the same feel. So this year, Gino has a lot to prove in the
yeah.
eyes of everyone else. But his story is compelling, to see him be a journeyman and last that long and then have his moment. And, he did what he did with it.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like his story, and I think it would
No.
cap it off then if he could go ahead and take us to the Super Bowl, and then, it would just.
I mean, how incredible would that be? Are you kidding me? Like, that would be insane.
You talk about how Gino treated Locke, and
Mhm,
in your book, you have a chapter where you talk about having a five-star mentality and how
mhm.
you treat other people.
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from, and why do you think that was important to include in your book, Lead with Faith, Play with Purpose?
Yeah, I just feel like we're in a world right now where we highlight a lot of me, 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 self, And of course, you've heard it. There's no I in team, blah, blah, blah. But truly, for you to be a 5-star type person, being a diva is trash. You're not a good human being if you don't treat other human beings regular, like normal, because just because you have more of a platform or more cameras on you or a little bit more success in your life doesn't mean that you're better than anyone else. The people that I just love those who are in the spotlight, but you wouldn't tell when you have a conversation with them. And character is huge. And I've been able to see people whose character wasn't the greatest and see the people and be around them that are awesome and that make you feel like you're a regular human being and you're talking to a regular human being. And I just want to, remind athletes coming up now, leaders and athletes currently, that you make more of an impact when when life isn't just about you. It's bigger than you. It's always going to be bigger than you. And at the end of the day, those same people who are, lifting you up are going to be there to watch you fall as well. So you have to think, you know what, this is bigger than me. I know this is a part of me right now, but it's not my identity. It's not who I am. I am a human being. I'm a good person, and I'm a be that way for the rest of my life. And so I just wanted to instill that and drop that seed in the book for athletes, because at the end of the day, people will love you more if you're not too pompous or arrogant.
And your book releases July 30th. I can obviously tell from reading through it and even by the title. I mean, it's directed more toward athletes, and but is there, for someone who isn't a current athlete, how do you recommend it for people who can this pertain to their everyday life, even being a non-athlete?
Absolutely. That's why I mentioned it's for leaders and athletes. If you're a human being that breathes, and if you don't see yourself as a leader, this book will uncover that and show how you are a leader. And if you are a leader, this book is going to help remind you why you are a leader, why you are in the position that you are. And then for athletes, it's going to help be a cheat code for your life as you maneuver in your athletic career. It's going to be a cheat code. How do you deal with certain issues that come up? What do you do at transition? I try to give you a heads up on transition, because that's really tough for athletes. It doesn't matter where you're transitioning from, because if you're a high school star and then you're transitioning to college, but you're not playing sports, you got to find that that easy transition. College to the pros, there's a transition there. And then when you are a pro athlete transitioning into the real world, that can be so tough because your identity has been so wrapped around your actual sport. If you think now ahead of time, what else are you about? What else do you love? What other things do you like to do? If you're thinking about those things now, you're setting yourself up for success.
You talked about being a diva, and one of the guys on the Seahawks who I think gets tied to that for one, I don't know for what reason. I feel like they try to tie it to him because he's a wide receiver, and that position ends up getting that kind of attention generally. DK Metcalf. One of my favorite shorts or TikToks that you put out was one where Ken Walker goes into the end zone on a touchdown, and it's DK Metcalf drawing the corner and faking in a way that that made it so Walker didn't have to worry about that guy at all on his way to the end zone. I feel like DK doesn't get called out enough for some of those things that he does on the field. It's the camera's always on him when he's on the sideline and upset about something.
Right. And unfortunately, that is our world, because DK, personally, he's not a diva. He's the funniest, like, biggest kid I feel like I know. Like, when you actually, if you were in his circle, you'll be like, oh my goodness, He's just super passionate on the field,
Yeah.
and he wants to win. And at the end of the day, sometimes that passion gets the best of him, and then it's on the camera and you're in the spotlight. And at the end of the day, you can't, it's unfortunate. You can't take that back, So that's a constant thing where you're trying to remember not to react, but rather respond, and there's times we all do it. We just don't have cameras on us, So that's the tough spot about being in the camera all the time. And DK does so many little things on the field that people don't highlight or see. That's why I did that video, because DK did not have to do that. In the back of the end zone, act like he caught the ball and draw attention to himself so K9 could scoot his way into the end zone. And he does that all the time. Not only does he do that all the time in the games, he does that at practice. He does that in training camp. He's doing all the little things that he doesn't get highlighted for. But on the other end, at the end of it, though, you still have to control your anger. You still have to control yourself. And so I'm seeing a maturation happening in DK, and I hope even as he steps into this new year, everyone else will see that more as well.
Interesting for fans making that transition from one coaching staff to another. I have to imagine it's even more so for staff around, because you guys are kind of separated from employees that kind of run social media and game day type stuff. And then there's all this new staff now that's coming to the building. What goes into that for you? Or is there any anxiety leading up to that of how it's going to be different?
You know what? I'm the type of person that just goes with the flow. So I feel like training camp, I'll know here pretty soon. I know they're working on my dates for which ones I'm hosting. And eventually I'll meet the guys, the staff, the new staff members. And I'm here to serve them. So whatever they want, whatever the vibe is, I'm going to be that for them and not stress on it. So I know it's different than Coach Pete. Even I'm hearing, well, I don't know if I want to say yet, but I'm hearing there's going to be a little bit different at training camp. So, and if that's the case, it's a new culture. We got it. It's a new vision. It's a new wave. So we're going to just ride it the way it goes.
Well, and I think a lot of that too, as fans, we have to expect that it's going to be different in some way, because this
Absolutely.
guy isn't Pete Carroll. He had his
Right.
own way of going about things. And so, yeah, obviously there's going to be changes.
Yeah. And let's be honest, a lot of fans wanted change.
Right.
Some people vocalized it, some didn't. And some are like, okay, we have change. So it's inevitable. Change is coming. And so you have to just take it and roll with it.
Yeah. And sometimes I guess I'm the type of fan who wants to embrace it, until I see otherwise. That can be tough too.
Yeah. I'm just not a regrets person. So I'm like, okay, this is the new thing. All right, I'm gonna give to it. And I remember history, I remember what it was like, but at the end of the day, we're not going back to that era. So we want to win now. So whatever the new change is, obviously there's going to be, at some point, I'm going to assume there's going to be growing pains. So just be willing to get through it, because at the end of those growing pains, you still grow. So let's go through the growing pains, and who knows, it may be a switch that we needed, and it just catapult to that Super Bowl run. And if not, I'm still riding with the Seahawks.
You recently led a panel discussion with Trey Brown and Thomas Rawls, and I had no idea that Rawls was still around or in the area. Maybe he's not. Maybe he came in for this, but it got me. How is Thomas doing?
He's great. This guy, man, he's awesome. He's doing well. I had a great panel discussion with him. He has a big heart for people, big heart for young people, and it was just cool listening to his story and hearing him impart to the kids. He's doing great.
Because I I just remember as a Seahawks fan, like he came in after Marshawn, undrafted free
Mm-hmm.
agent, so not a whole lot of expectations. And then he came in for Marshawn, and he had an amazing stretch of games.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, man, did we find our running back of the future in Thomas Rawls? And then he has the injury, and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the same after that. So, yeah, I'm always a little bit bummed when I see Rawls, but yeah, I for that stretch of time, he was incredible.
Yeah, he's a good guy, man. And he was a train. They called him Thomas the Train for a reason, you know? he was a beast. I always remember that 49ers game when he just went nuts.
Right.
And I think it was like, I want to say like 2016. But that guy was,
It would have been right. Yeah.
yeah. But he's a good person. I mean, from my experience with him, yeah, he's doing well.
Who are you excited about in terms of players going into the season?
Oh, Spoon. I'm
Yeah.
excited for Witherspoon, Woolen, um, JSN, DK. I'm excited. I would say those four right there, or I'm really excited about. And I'm also excited for, our rookie defensive lineman, Byron. I mean, he's a beast. But I think I need to see in training camp. When
Right.
I'm in training camp, that's when I really can assess and really say, okay, this is what I'm excited for. I'll get a good read.
And it's especially hard with a lot of the linemen in training camp too, because they really don't get a chance to show. The quarterbacks are wearing a different jersey. You can't touch them, and so it's really not until some of those preseason games where you get a chance to see how those guys can perform.
Yeah. And what people have to understand too, it's tough for linemen on both sides to really display when it's not game day. Because you don't want to hurt your guys right before season. And even with preseason, I honestly feel like coaches would rather just jump right into the season.
I think as we lean more toward the NFL wants to probably do 18 games at some point. It kind of feels like we might be going that way. We're already down to 3 preseason games instead of 4.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't hurt my feelings necessarily if the game started to count a little bit earlier, but I'm sure there's a lot of work that the players need to do to get ready for a season too.
Yeah, I think it's a interesting fine line to, you don't want to hurt your guys at training camp. However, it'd be great to callous them during training camp, because if you're getting hit and getting smacked around and there's tempers flying and there's that competing I mean, they're always competing, but it's just different when Legion of Boom was here. The stories I heard about practice, there's a reason why they were the way they were. They were uber competitive, and there's obviously all over YouTube you can hear about stories, but practice was different.
Yeah.
And who knows, Coach Mike may come in here and bring that back, and it'd be a different story. So we'll see. But I agree. I think, you want to knock off the dust, but I think if they did more in training camp to help with that, they'll go into the season more calloused up, less injuries, and be ready to get going.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to with training camp coming up. I know you have a lot to look forward to with your new book coming out July 30th, Lead with Faith, Play with Purpose. That's coming out. Anything else you want to talk about with regard to your book, where people go? I mentioned, you can pre-order it on Amazon, and might be the easiest way to get it. But yeah, let people know where to find you and a little bit more about your book.
Yeah, you guys can find me. I've made it very easy. You can follow me on TikTok, Andy L. Dooley, Dooley. It's the same on Instagram. It's the same on YouTube. And just like Brandon said, let's hit 2 million on TikTok now, since you guys know. And I wanted to show you guys will be the first to see this. So right before I hopped on to do this podcast, UPS dropped off my book. So I'm seeing it for the first time.
There it is.
Like in its actual form. So you guys can see it. And then on the back, there it is. So if you notice and pay attention, there's some
Color scheme.
continuity.
The color scheme is
Yeah.
on point.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, so the book is going to be incredibly powerful. It's going to be life-changing for any leaders you have in your life. You are a leader, and it's very tactical as well. It's fun, it's quick, it's 100 different devotionals to help you throughout your life, your career. And obviously, if you're an athlete, this is going to be a cheat code. The vision I have for this is you'll receive your playbook, and then you'll receive this book on top of your playbook. This is the playbook for life alongside the playbook that you'll have for your schemes that you're doing for your sports. So I'm excited for this book to drop on the 30th. I can't wait for you guys to get a copy. And if you do get a copy, reach out to me on Instagram. Seriously, no problem. Reach out to me, tag me on it, and I'll repost it on my Insta stories. I just love seeing you guys' faces. I love seeing you guys holding the book, and I can't wait to hear the stories that are going to come out from this.
Okay, so 3 things to do. Get the book when it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
2, subscribe to Andy Dooley on TikTok so we can get him to 2 million. And number 3, subscribe to this show, or you can go to getintheflock.com, help support the show. Andy, I appreciate you supporting the show, coming on here and talking Seahawks with me, talking about your book. Really had a good time.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate you. I really feel like we could have talked for hours on this. So thank you for letting me invade your space.
I'm here all summer. I'm here through the season. If you ever want to come on, talk Seahawks football,
100%.
I'm here. This is what I love doing. And I think with that, Andy, there's only one thing left to say. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.